This movie has slimy producers trying to exploit the success of the first one written all over it.
Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Mission Impossible. What's Emilio Estevez's character's name?
Fuck you. His name is Fuck You, Dave. That's what his fucking name is.
Not even memorable enough for you to remember what they're called.
Honestly, go fuck yourself.
And I can't help that Woody wrote Andy a note in Toy Story 3. If I got a note that said, "Hey Jeff," and it turned out that it was that is literally the premise for Chucky. Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies both new and old with a strictly positive, critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we are making this a drinking game.
Drinking game.
Any negative criticism about a film is absolutely allowed, of course, but it will be called out. You will hear this sound.
Drink, bitch!
That means you said something negative or perhaps something stupid, and therefore you have to take a drink. And we hope that everybody at home or listening on Twitch here live will drink along with us.
We say Twitch live. We're running a little late on Twitch tonight because of Spectrum in New York. Thanks, Spectrum.
Yeah, we'll put live in quotes.
Dave, you want to finish the intro?
What else we got? You want to finish the fucking info?
Sure. We're still live, kind of. So, pour yourselves a glass, join us, and give it up for the films we love, and perhaps a film that needs some love. I'm interested to see what you guys think of that one.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah? Well, I'm very curious to hear what you think about that one. So here we go. People. All right, we're going to be talking about a couple of films from 1991. But first, let's send it over to John for a couple quick shout-outs.
All right, the shout-outs as always. Our beer sponsor, his name is Carlos Barroso. You can find him on Instagram. The handle is C Barroso Bar 2019. That is CBARROZOBAR 2019. And as always, the music you hear on this episode and every single episode is provided by the artist Dasein. That's Dasein, Dasein. You can find all the music available for free downloads at soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist. Let's fucking do it. Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. We are talking about 1991. That was the year chosen by our random year generator. And so we chose three very different films from one another to talk about it. And we'll give you a little bit of a setup of things that were going on in 1991. What was the 1991 year in film? But first, we have to stay relevant by doing a quick little round of any news stories or anything you've been watching that you want to share. Why don't we go ahead and start with Dave?
I mean, of course, I've been watching The Mandalorian. Who hasn't? I mean, I found one person that hadn't. But they're really leaning into it this season. I find this season to be like they really took on board from season one, and they're just picking it up and kicking it right up a notch. Like the stories are better. We're getting characters that people have been wanting for years. It's fantastic. Big news out of this week was Warner Brothers dropping the bomb on their release schedule. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we're just going to drop everything in streaming and cinemas at the same time, but didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And
we talked about this briefly during our screening.
It's like when like when you let, when you're at an intersection, you let a guy in and four people go, and like AMC stand there going, no, fuck it, I said one. It's like, yeah. And Disney this week has their conference, their like investor conference, so we're going to find out what their plan is. And there's a rumor they're going to merge Hulu into Disney Plus.
Holy shit.
I know. Because Hulu has like 38 million subscribers and Disney Plus has 74. And Disney Plus is already worldwide, whereas Hulu's not.
I will say I'm really tired of paying for both of them. I guess it's the same bundle. But I'm tired of getting the commercials on Hulu because I want to pay for the Disney Plus bundle, and you can't get Hulu Plus through the Disney bundle. So I will be happy to not have to watch commercials for Hulu. I'll just put it that way. Nice. Yeah, Dave,
that's all I got. Yeah.
That's big. Yeah, so all of your favorite movies are going to be coming out live the day they're released in theaters that are Warner Brothers movies, which is a lot, and that's fucking crazy for all of 2021. That's what it is, right, Dave?
Yeah, their whole release date for 2021 apparently is going straight to streaming, but it goes to streaming for like 30 days or something, and then it's only available in cinemas for the rest of its run.
You would think it would be the other way, but that's cool.
You
Yeah,
would, but
think it would be the other way.
HBO is driving memberships. They're behind on their memberships. HBO Max is down in memberships, so they're trying to drive people to the product.
Last week. That's why they threw their fucking bank truck right at Wonder Woman, because they're like, come on, people, let's get on board.
Yeah, and Wonder Woman will be the first in HDR on there as well, in 4K HDR. It's about time.
All right,
nice, dude.
John.
Nothing big. I had my parents up here this week, so we watched these movies, did a good family visit. I'm still crushing West Wing. I'm almost done with season 4. Have either of you watched this show? Should I keep going past season 4 when Aaron Sorkin left the show? Can I get some advice from viewers or my co-hosts?
I
thought he stopped writing the show. I thought he left after season 4. I heard that he has never even seen an episode after season 4 ends. So if anyone wants to shout out at me on the interweb over there and give me some advice, I don't think I've ever continued past season 4. So let me know. Jeff, what have you been watching?
Last week I told you I was planning on starting Queen's Gambit a couple weeks late, and then you guys told me that we had chosen a 3.5-hour movie for this fucking week, and I got mad at you. But I was able to stick it out, and I did start the Queen's Gambit. It's really fun. It's fun. It's just fun. I don't know. It's not. It's not the most serious, crazy, amazing thing.
Yeah.
It's just enchanting.
I've heard that
it's
as well.
great. It's not the next Wire, but it's just really fun. And you just want.
How many episodes in are you?
I think I've seen 4 out of the 7.
Okay. All right.
So that's pretty good for a week in which I had to do all this stuff, and I have grad school coming up, and I really want to get through my grad school shit because we have Mank coming out. We have Uncle Frank and all these other fun things.
Yeah,
look really
I did want to shout out. I haven't watched it yet, but Hillbilly Elegy is on Netflix now. The Ron Howard, Glenn Close, Amy Adams movie. It was supposed to be good. Do want to watch that?
A lot of good shit. We'll keep the good times coming with the news, but let's get into our podcast this week. We're talking about 1991. So 1991, the highest grossing movie, is one of the most important movies, certainly if you are a fan of special effects in the history of cinema, which is Terminator 2 Judgment
Day, dude. Fuck
$519 million, and it was a huge, sorry, is a huge film for the visual effects house Industrial Light and Magic, of course, and proof that sequels can be even better and more lucrative than the first, as if Star Wars and Indiana Jones hadn't already told us that, but it was cool moving it into the 90s. And then second place on the list is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, so pretty goddamn good year for costume. All right, Dave. Wow. Yeah. People are a sucker for those. This time period, we're coming out of. I saw Out of Africa one time with Meryl Streep and Robert Redford, and there was a 20-minute scene where she just made up a story. It had nothing to do with the plot.
I want to rescind that because I got it confused with the other Robin Hood that came out last year. I actually enjoyed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. No, well, Men in Tights I love.
Ridley Scott one.
Whatever that was. Yeah.
Anyway, this comes from a time period where people were into these long, enchanting stories that seemed familiar, but were whatever. Okay, so anyway, Beauty and the Beast, number 3. Awesome fucking film. Wins a couple Oscars for Alan Menken. Beauty and the Beast. What a hit. You have Hook at number 4. Steven Spielberg.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
I think Hook's fun, man.
Hook bums me out, dude. I didn't realize until I was an adult that it was like critically slammed. Like it was they did not like Spielberg's movie. All of us fucking loved it though. If you were coming of age at all in that period, I think that we all hold that in a very special place in our hearts.
It's another reason why critics don't always get it right.
Guys, there is no way that any of us saw Hook and thought that Maggie Smith would live another 30 years.
No way, dude. She's been that old since Hook. In my mind, like she was Granny Wendy since Hook. I don't know how they did it.
A lot of love to 2-time Academy Award winner.
God.
And Dave's favorite Harry Potter character.
Yes.
Dave's favorite Harry Potter character.
She's got sass.
Silence of the Lambs comes in at number 5 with $272 million. Silence of the Lambs, stat, came out on Valentine's Day of this year.
Fuck, dude.
And it is still widely considered to be the first film to win the Academy Award and considered a horror film. And as John mentioned during our segment about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it is only the third film of all time, still only the third film of all time, to win what they call the Big 5 Oscars, which is picture, director, writing, actor and actress, won the Big Five, even though Anthony Hopkins only had like 12 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
Today he would definitely be considered a supporting role. Yeah.
Definitely probably the Best Picture winner. I can't think of another one that has come out any earlier than that in the year, in the past 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. Get Out was a nominee that was pretty close. That that came out in January,
March?
Sundance, and then February.
Was that January? Yeah.
Well, it was at Sundance, and then it was released.
Right.
And then you have our first film, JFK, comes in at number 6 with 205 million worldwide. The Addams Family.
I love that movie too.
Comes in at number 7. Cape Fear, that is a remake, but a very important remake because it is Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro and Nick Nolte and Juliette Lewis, and it's awesome. I highly recommend Cape Fear if you like your De Niro Scorsese alignment. Last 2 on the top 10, you have Hot Shots. Fucking Hot Shots comes in.
Yes, dude. Yes.
How did they make a part 2? $181 million on the first one. That's how. And then City Slickers, which wins Jack Palance the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. And this is a very famous Billy Crystal Oscars year for all of my Oscar fans. Billy Crystal hosted this year, and Jack Palance won early on. And he was just a really cocky dude. So Billy Crystal made the whole show about Jack Palance and made all these funny jokes. For all of you Oscar fans.
Have you seen Jack Palance's acceptance speech?
Where
he gets down and does one-arm push-ups on stage to show...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. There was like a kids segment where like kids sang Beauty and the Beast or something, and Billy Crystal comes on and was like, Jack Palance fathered all of those children. Like he just kept making all these really funny jokes.
It's one of the best Oscar ceremonies ever. If you can find it, watch it.
Oh my god! Well, other standout. I know.
So funny.
I'm already getting wordy. Although this is a really fun year, right? So
this is a great
year. Best Picture nominees: Beauty and the Beast nominated for Best Picture, and in fact, this starts the 12-year conversation of should animated movies just have their own category. But Beauty and the Beast gets the nom here. But JFK, Prince of Tides.
Yeah, Prince of Tides is a big deal. Wasn't that the first time? Was that the first time a female-directed picture was nominated for Best Picture? I'm pretty sure Barbra Streisand was not nominated for Best Director, which was a controversy.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a good question. I wouldn't be surprised because I don't think Point Break got Catherine Bigelow in there, and
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And The Piano was 1992, I think, which was Jane Campion, and she got nominated
Correct.
for that, right? So cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Done. Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, a big year because we're going to talk about John Singleton, but he's the youngest ever Best Director nominee at 24 years old for our second film.
Shit.
Boyz in the Hood. He beats the record that was. It goes all the way back to Citizen Kane, who he was 26. So John Singleton, 24, still has not been beaten. Barry Levinson for Bugsy, Oliver Stone, JFK. And then another standout film is Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
Thelma and Louise was a huge film that came out this year.
That was also one of the nominees for Best Cinematography as well, that film, along with Terminator 2.
Good movie, dude.
Yeah, just for that last sequence.
Yeah, right?
It's Ridley Scott, right? Ridley Scott did Thelma and Louise, right?
Ridley Scott,
What an unusual Ridley Scott film. Point Break is fucking awesome. You already called that one out. So glad to call that out. Fisher King was fun. And then there was another one I saw before I get to 2 foreign films I just wanted to throw some love at. God, I'm going to butcher this man's name. Raise the Red Lantern was made by Yimou Zhang, Chinese director who went on to make Hero and House of Flying Daggers that everybody knows. Those two were very successful over here.
Oh, yeah.
This was one of his first breakout films. It's unbelievable. Raise the Red Lantern. I recommend that. And the Russian master, Krzysztof Kieslowski, made The Double Life of Veronique. This is the guy that went on to make the Three Colors trilogy that Quentin Tarantino very controversially beat in his last year that this man was alive at Cannes Film Festival with Pulp Fiction. He beat him for his final film in the Three Colors trilogy, and Quentin Tarantino won, and everybody was fucking furious.
I've only seen Blue. I've never seen the rest of them. I've only seen Blue.
Oh, that's the heaviest one.
Yeah, I know. It's probably why I didn't see the others.
Yeah. Anyway,
there's just a few more. Barton Fink is a Coen Brothers movie.
Oh yeah,
and that actually won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. John, you're talking about the film festival. Barton Fink wins the Palme d'Or, which is surprising. And shout out to Toy Soldiers, What About Bob, and for all of you Culkin fans, The Incredible Culk. My Girl comes out in 1991.
And let's not sit on the Rocketeer. That was a big kid movie. I was super into that.
That was.
And did you say My Private Idaho? Gus Van Sant?
I did not say or Fried Green Tomatoes. A lot of good stuff.
91. So if you go to the 91 section, you're Blockbuster, everyone.
Yeah. Right, second year of an amazing golden age decade in Hollywood.
David his weekly nudge to get us to move the fuck on after a good segment. Okay, here we go. It's time for us to get into Our three films, I've already hinted at two of them. So we're going to start with JFK, which is only 3 hours and 7 minutes, unless you choose to get the director's cut, which is another 3 hours and 27 minutes. I have a feeling I know what the 20 minutes is that they cut. It's just a guess. We'll get into it. Okay. I did not do that, although I was really pissed off because we chose this fucking film in November because it was on HBO Max. And then I started it November 30th, watched an hour, tried to watch it again December 1st, and its contract ran out the day before. So I had to fucking rent it after I'd already seen. God damn it. That's what I get for choosing a movie and the break of a month. Anyway, JFK, Oliver Stone. The cast is fucking ridiculous. Kevin Costner leads the cast. Gary Oldman plays Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald. You have Joe Pesci with the worst wig in movie history, for sure. Sorry. You have Tommy Lee Jones, who solidified his rankings here in the early 90s, as we've talked later about The Fugitive, etc. Ed Asner, Kevin Bacon, two-time Academy Award winner Jack Lemmon, Vincent D'Onofrio, Sissy Spacek, Wade Knight, Laurie Metcalf, Walter Matthau, John Candy, multiple Emmy Award winner John Larroquette gets cut out of the movie.
It's like, we've got enough.
And then a couple of those, what I call that guy actors, where I'm going to say their names and you're never going to have heard of them, but you see their face and you go, yeah, that guy. So such a good cast. It's ridiculous. It is about JFK. It's Oliver Stone's pitch for how it happens. That's this. I'm not even going to read the IMDb thing. Oliver Stone believes this is an inside job that involved the mafia and some aspects of our military. And that's basically what the movie is about. Definitely going to be talking about conspiracy theories. All right. And then, so we're getting into JFK now. Then we'll talk about Boyz in the Hood. And then we'll talk about Drop Dead Fred at the end in our segment. Was it really that bad? But since I've already like halfway nudged our way into JFK, let's get into it. Who wants to start? Who wants to do it?
I kind of want to make an overall observation before we get too into the filming. I'm curious if you guys share this. We live in a world now where things are flipped. There was a time for a long time when people who identify maybe as liberal or the liberal side of politics was more concerned about certain conspiracy theory kind of things. It was kind of weird. I've seen this movie 2 or 3 times now, and I felt very different watching it now in 2020 when the conspiracy theories are owned by the right now. Like, I almost felt like it was a little less believable watching it in this day and age, because some things did feel like they were reaching. Whereas the earlier times when I've watched this, certainly when I was young in like middle school when I saw it for the first time, and maybe 10 years ago when I watched it after college, I remember being like, yeah, like this is probably what happened. And of course, we don't have to get into whether or not it happened, but the sentiment behind it felt a little strange to watch right now. Did you guys feel that as well? Or were you able to completely separate it from what we're living in right now?
I felt it. I felt it a tiny bit.
Terminology crosses over.
Yeah, but it definitely has crossovers with what like is happening now.
Witch hunt was a word that you used in this movie in 1991. Yeah, there's a lot of crossover. All right, sorry, Dave, keep going.
Using the press to destroy people. Yeah, it's there's all that stuff. It's still happening. Yeah. It's like nobody learnt from the 60s and 70s.
So what do you guys think of Oliver Stone's movies in general? Like, does this one rank towards the top for you?
Well, Platoon's the best, right? Is there any question that Platoon's the best?
Platoon the best, yeah. I think it probably is. Born on the 4th of July is a good one, too.
Really great.
I saw, actually, I lied to you earlier. I saw Snowden the other night for the first time, and that was him. I forgot he made that recently, and I enjoyed that. I mean, but I think I agree with you. I think this one is definitely the best.
I would make the comment he needs to edit the shit out of it and cut some time down, but that doesn't really stand in the case of this film because it's so fucking pacey. The editing is phenomenal. Like it's three and a change long, and you don't feel a bit of it. You're like glued the whole time. It's just pace, and fast cuts and stuff like that. And sometimes that's very disorienting and doesn't work. It works in this.
Yeah, so it won Best Film Editing and then Best Cinematography at the Oscars.
How did it win Best Cinematography? I have to ask, because there was nothing stand out there.
I think it was because I'm gonna guess first of all, it's because they campaigned well. I would guess.
Also got the money.
But also, I would guess too because of the Rashomon style, where they would shoot the same scene multiple ways, but they wouldn't show them back to back necessarily. You would see the same angle or same situation an hour later into the film. And so I would guess that they were able to campaign on that they were able to show all of the reenactments. They got Joe Pesci to do like the same 4 scenes 7 different ways in that terrible wig. And I think that like they were able to sell that. I don't know. That would be my guess.
I mean, that's a good point. That's probably how they did it.
Silence Slam should have won Best Cinematography though, because those couple sequences are just fucking perfect. Like somebody was behind the camera.
Yeah. I mean, the just the end of Silence of the Lambs, that one.
Just the night vision
yeah,
scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just
terrifies people to this day. That's timeless, that scene.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask my usual question to you. When was have you guys seen this before? I know Jeff has seen it before. Dave, was this your first time? You said yes, right?
First time around on this, yeah.
What was that like watching something because everything is different now. The style of the way we would tell this story is different now. This is like exclusively Oliver Stone. So I also don't know how many of his movies you've seen. Like
I've seen a few. I've done Platoon. I've done I forget. But anyway, 4th of July, Born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like for me it was almost like they sold the first couple of minutes of it as a history lesson. And if you're going to bookend something like that in a documentary style, you got to be very careful with what you put in the middle. If what you put in the middle is a theory, do you get what I mean? Like, because they're kind of selling it like a documentary, and it's not a documentary. And he comes out and says that to his credit after the film. But anyone sitting there watching the film, like, you've just contributed to a person walking out believing something that might not be true. Because I can tell you, I made that note at the beginning of the film. By the end of the film, I was fucking on board. Their argument is compelling, and I can see how a lot of people walked out and went, "No, they fucking did this." And
this is
I'm in two minds about that.
This is exactly. I think I will identify with the second mind that you just referred to within yourself, because he was just on Joe Rogan's podcast not too long ago. So he kind of went through his whole filmography, and they were talking about, obviously this man cares a great deal about uncovering what he thinks is the truth. And every time I watch one of his movies, I kind of have to just get on board with the fact that he has a very obvious point of view in all these issues.
I mean, the central theme of all of them is Vietnam is bad.
And
Vietnam's bad. Okay.
He served. So
yeah, I mean, he served. Yeah, so granted, that's going to be a central theme. But again, like it was even prominent. Like he bookended the JFK thing with the whole thing was about the war machine, and we've had many discussion about the war machine.
The war machine, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I do think that I'm glad he exists, because I think he, as somebody who's much younger than that generation who came after them, I very much appreciate having a voice that is that consistent and makes issues around those issues that they cared so much about from their generation, because I feel like I do kind of get to peer back in time to see how maybe if you were on some college campus or if you were in some newsroom, people might have been going back and forth about what everybody was talking about. My mom, I was talking to them about this movie, and they'd seen it before, I think. Actually, I don't think she had ever seen all of it. And she was talking about how, like, there was a period of 10 or 15 years where, like, you could not escape a room in a college or in some, maybe a more liberal gathering, thinking intellectual gathering, where people would not bring up the JFK assassination and whether or not it was an assassination or a straight up murder with Oswald. So I do think it was cool that he was able to bring something so vast into the public. I mean, this is not a small movie, right?
No.
He didn't make a Snowden. Snowden was way shorter.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as to say there's literally nothing they could have cut from this film that wouldn't have made it suffer. Like, everything you need to know is in there, and he covered all the points he wanted to make.
Yeah.
Jeff,
well, let me ask, so I've seen this twice, and you guys, I saw it with John the first time for sure. We saw it together.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it before. You said last week that I'd seen it 6 times. This is 3 hours. I don't need to see this 6 times. This is good.
Who has that
seen
much
it
life?
Before we saw it together.
I had not seen it before we saw it together. I probably did the thing where it was on TV and I was fascinated, so I watched, but I don't know if I'd actually seen it all the way through. Well, 2 things. Number one, it's hard to not talk about the conspiracy theory, but he makes the case, so you have to at least question whether or not it's possible, right? Which kind of sets this apart from many of the other conspiracy theories that are out there, especially the current ones, right? It's okay to have some critical thought here. Have you guys ever been to Dallas where this happened?
No.
Okay, so I'll get back to that. The one thing that I noticed that Oliver Stone does, okay, so there's a trial, right? We just did To Kill a Mockingbird a couple weeks ago, and a lot of information, because it's from Scout's point of view, comes up at the trial that we hadn't seen before. This movie's different, where they're gathering we watch Kevin Costner. It's his story, him and his family, what he's going through because he's fighting for his country, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that by the time they finally get to the trial, we've seen him accumulate all this evidence. And in fact, in some cases, Oliver Stone has a really difficult job of holding out the suspense, because all of the information is there. It's just piecing it together. They're looking for the pieces, right? And all the witnesses keep dying, getting killed because of part of this greater conspiracy theory, at least according to the movie. And so by the time you get to trial, the trial is very powerful. And Kevin Costner gives an incredible monologue, also probably similar to the To Kill a Mockingbird, like that closing argument speech. He very famously ends the speech looking straight at the camera, which we've referenced on this podcast. And so it's a hard task for Oliver Stone, because in some cases, some of the things that he's been holding out for the trial are almost too obvious to have kept that long. And other things he says early, and then when he says it again in the trial, you've known it for so long watching the movie that it's not as dramatic. So I would guess that the 20 minutes that he cut out of the director's cut to make it only 3 hours and 7 minutes are the trial sequences of stuff we've already seen. That would be like a big guess for me. And I think that is difficult. That's the only thing in my rewatch where I was like, should we have gotten to the trial sooner and saved some information there? Like a typical trial movie where they get information during the trial, like every other good trial movie, something comes up during the trial. In this case, nothing comes up during the trial. Everything has already been gathered. So that was something that I thought about.
But they did save the film to the end.
The film, they saved the Zapruder film
because they're like right at the beginning, they showed the drive down and they cut away from the incidental moment. They just showed the birds flying off, so you don't see the assassination. But boy, howdy, you do later.
Oh, you do, you do later for sure. So to wrap up by going back to the beginning, which is, have you ever been in Dallas? There's a couple things he does in the movie which are the whole case quickly, and one of them is the Donald Sutherland. Jesus Christ, Jeff. The beer is just starting to hit me. I'm going to be really clear in like 10 minutes. The Donald Sutherland monologue, which is very famous. And a lot of it is just so obvious. Why are there open windows if a government was doing this? Why would they change the route the day up? Like all of the questions that it's like, holy shit, that's the whole movie. Is really just the Donald, like that's the case, right? That not necessarily the movie. That's the case. What the other thing I would say is, if you've ever been to Dallas, it's so fucking obvious that it's weird. It's so obvious that you smell shit everywhere, and they are dancing around it in the movie when all you need to do is go there and look. And I'm not saying it wasn't Oswald. I'm not doing that kind of stuff, but just the shot of the limo coming straight at the building and then turning and then him waiting 30 seconds. The limo was 50 feet from him at one point, and he waits until it's 300 feet through trees to shoot. Just doesn't make any sense, and I feel like he danced around it. So it's interesting to look at it from that point. But even if you've never been to Dallas, the one thing for me is how he kept information for
I'll tell you, can you watch that courtroom scene without thinking of the Jerry Seinfeld episode with the second spitter? It's like, because really I can't watch it, like, because I when in Australia they used to buy blocks of episodes of TV, and so you'd get like a season of Seinfeld and a season of something else just repeated for the year. So I've seen that episode with the second spitter like gag so many times. And then when they got to that bit, I'm like, and I stopped the movie and I had to find it on YouTube, because it's on YouTube, and play it for my wife, because she was like, "Why are you laughing?"
Yeah.
It's like, you don't understand. They did this really great, like, it's something very serious, but they did this amazing parody of it using one of the guys who was in the movie.
Who was it? Do you know who it was?
Yeah, Wayne Knight.
Oh my God, Wayne!
Because Newman is the guy who the spit reflects on, like it bounces off Kramer and hits Newman.
They are so proud of Wayne Knight for getting other work outside of their show. They're so proud. Dave, I wish. I actually was thinking of the movie Jackie with Natalie Portman, which I think is a really good. It's a really great performance by her. She would have won an Oscar if she hadn't already won one. My point of view.
It's an unbelievable performance from her. She was incredible.
She was really great, and that's basically her point of view around the time of the assassination.
What do you guys think?
Anyway.
No. Well, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, I just wish it was funny. I was because they took John F. Kennedy away from her. She wasn't allowed to see him. They tried to cancel the funeral because it was too public, and they were worried. It's all this weird shit, and it's funny to see it. Not funny, Jesus Christ. Dave's scene is funny. I wish I was thinking of Seinfeld. I wish I wasn't thinking of Jackie. That's what I think. Okay, John, back to you.
What do you think about? Damn it! I was overpoured this beer. What do you think about?
I've been there.
The scene work. The scene work at home. Obviously, he was trying to create. Because Dave, I totally agree with what you were saying initially about how. Come on, get in there. About how this movie is, initially projected as almost documentary style. It's gonna feel like you're watching a really excellent like CNN news special, and then Kevin Costner's character becomes more and more obsessed with this. And I personally felt, I'm curious if you guys disagree, I personally felt like he was supposed to be our surrogate for the obsession that people have around this issue.
Sure.
And it was supposed to invade his family life. It was affected the relationship with him and his wife, Sissy Spacek, was supposed to be very, very tumultuous towards the end because he was just not there, even when he was there physically, emotionally and mentally. He could not stop talking about it. There's that one scene where he literally wakes up in the middle of the night and just starts ranting about it. Do you think that was necessary for us to enjoy this movie? And if it is necessary, do you feel like they pulled it off with a lot of, do you think this movie would have benefited more from having more weight on that side of the storytelling? Or were you guys totally satisfied with getting back to the documentary stuff and just being like, I wish Kevin would leave his house so we can go learn more information about the JFK assassination? What did you think?
I feel like it was good that it was interspersed, but also it gave you like the constant interruptions of like the media that was happening in the background. It's a reflection of when something like this goes down, like when a big event goes down like this, everyone is glued to their television. The only thing they're finding out, like the only information they're finding out, is from the media. But depending on what media you're watching, you're getting completely different information.
Right.
And I feel like it with those constant barrages that interrupted that story, like his scenes, it was kind of like the media intruding on what he's trying to do. I felt
that
like
is
it was
so
a great
interesting.
Statement.
I'm gonna call you out on that just because that's so interesting. That is a modern audience kind of perspective, because, and this is not a judgment on whether or not you like or dislike Fox News, but Fox News didn't exist then.
Yeah.
So they were still listening to Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather.
But then it was the news. Was it NBC?
I
think it was NBC that went after him and started questioning his mental faculties. It's like, so TV was still doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just more interesting. I think I'm agreeing with you. I think it's even more interesting because it was actually mainstream media. It wasn't the way we use that term now, where like there's left and right and we just fight about what actually is mainstream. That was Walter Cronkite coming out and saying, this is what I was told to say by the powers that be.
Yeah.
Right.
It is kind of fucking crazy. And I think the sickest thing about what I think Oliver Stone does pull off brilliantly is that we were saying like he cares so much about Vietnam. I think what he does do well is raise the issue that Kennedy's assassination became a kind of, guys, what were we talking last week about watching with Nightcrawler, watching like sick things that happen? This Pruder film is like one of the first times that people were doing that. We were talking in that conversation about how people get obsessed with the gore. Yeah. And it becomes more about the taboo and atrocity of the event than why it's happening. Watching the beheading videos, not that any of us did that, but the way people kind of obsessed over the idea of watching them, and nobody went deeper into the conversation of why that was actually happening. I think Oliver Stone, I think he did intend to do this. By showing us this movie this way, whether or not you like the choice, Kevin Costner needed to look us in the eye at the end of that closing argument. Because I think a lot of people, when this movie came out, had started to dramatize the assassination of JFK in their own personal way. And they lost sight of the question that Donald Sutherland asks. Nobody's asking why. Oh, come on, fuck you.
John with the gush. I can't believe that John is the one who always gushes over all these movies. So
well,
fun.
they're good movies. Yeah.
Nobody asked why. That's all I was saying.
Yeah,
nobody asked why anymore.
I mean,
everybody is very obsessed with who did it, and nobody is confused about or concerned about why anymore. And that is disgusting. So I do think you did a very good job of making that the point.
I had a discussion with my wife because like I didn't grow up here. I wasn't schooled here. I moved here. And
Right.
I was like, the feeling I got from this is the playbook for what's going on now was written in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. This is the conspiracy theory, because there are other ones before this, Pearl Harbor, like we don't have to talk about them, but like there were other ones that made people curious. This is the one, because this is the one where every single person thought twice about it. To finish what you were saying before about Kevin Costner, because this is important, because this is the filmmaking, this isn't just the pitch.
Yeah.
Yes, it had to be told through Kevin. Can I say Kevin Spacey?
No,
you didn't. You said Costner.
You didn't. You said Costner.
Why did I switch to Spacey? Kevin Costner's point of view. I don't know if I needed the family. I don't know if I needed him having a meeting on Easter Sunday and that kind of weird stuff. But I do think that not only the obsession, not only the absurdity, you can't stop looking at it. I think it needed to be shown. To your point, John, nobody was asking why. I think people were secretly, but nobody was doing anything about it. And I think it needed to be shown that we built our, if we're getting too patriotic, if I'm going to guess what Oliver Stone is saying here, we built our patriotism on the ability to question the people in charge, the people in power. It's our government, we have say. Right. And look what happens when you question your government about this, something which it seems like it's very possible the government at least knows more than they're telling us if they weren't involved. Right. I'm not getting down this conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And so by Kevin Costner questioning this, every single sign was telling him to stop. But is it a bigger act of patriotism to serve in the Vietnam War, or to call out your government so that it doesn't do this shit again, assuming they did it? And look at what you have to go through, but you have to do it. And I think we needed to see that struggle. It couldn't be easy. It can't be like today, where you just go on Twitter and say your shit and then you have a thread. And then all of a sudden you can say literally anything. Eventually we're going to have all worms coming out of our buttholes, and everybody believes that that's going to happen if you get a vaccine or something. But at the time, you had to question things. It's your patriotic duty. But we had to see that through Kevin Costner. I don't know if it was 100% successful. I don't know if we needed every bit of it for his family, but it had to happen. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I just want to point out one quick thing. In the middle of this, I think it's towards the end of the second hour, you get Donald Sutherland turn up as Mr. X and he lays it all out. He sits on a park bench and lays it all out with cutaways, and it's a 16-minute monologue. He doesn't stop. He's telling his whole story, and then Kevin Costner asks a question at like the 8-minute mark, and then he goes for another 8 minutes to just blurting all this stuff out. And it's amazing. Like, you don't even notice it's 16 minutes long, because the pacing of it just keeps you going the whole time. The way it's edited, the way it's delivered, the dialogue. I feel like it's a really great sequence.
There is. It's also unique. The urgency that Donald Sutherland brings to that monologue is interesting, but I think a lot of actors would realize, I need to have urgency here. I'm a source. This is sketchy. We're meeting. I love the choice he makes to almost tell it with some glee. Like, I have a secret that you don't know. It doesn't have the same tension that Deep Throat has.
Yeah, I'm about to blow your mind.
All the President's Men. It has more of there's a calm absurdity. He's kind of getting a kick out of it.
Yeah.
Which is almost like it twists it even more that he's so comfortable with what happened that I don't know if that was, I'm sure Oliver Stone made a choice there when they talked about how to play that part, but it doesn't feel like, in the shadows, obviously they're sitting on a park bench. It doesn't feel like that from the way he chooses to play it, which I think is really interesting, because it kind of gives you a breath of fresh air in the middle of this movie, which is very important, because you're worried that things are going to get so, I can't tell you everything, but that you're not going to be able to trust anyone. And Donald comes out there with that attitude, and it's very good. If the actor made that choice and he did that independently, it's very smart, because he knew this is very important. I need to give these audience members something that they can hang on to, but not feel like they're going to be pressed to get on board with crazy conspiracy. I don't know. I feel it's extremely
that's
effective.
The thing. Like, up until this point, they were having trouble finding a witness that would stick or not die, and all that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden, Donald Sutherland just sits down, and but at this point, you're hanging for any win on their part, and he sits down and just hands them their entire case, and then says, "Now you have to go prove it."
Right.
And it sets the tone for the whole second half of the film.
I think we're getting to some good stuff in this movie. I think we should start winding it down a little bit. So let's do a quick round of favorite performances or favorite quotes. I think is a gimmicky game that we don't always play very often. So obviously Gary Oldman, Gary Oldman in this role. It's so he does some Rashomon stuff too, where he does it like a couple different angles, a couple different points of view. Any others that you want to shout out?
Tommy Lee Jones, dude.
Tommy Lee Jones.
I don't know why. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he took this part in context of the rest of his career, but I'm so glad he did. It's not gonna make you get up out of your seat and scream bravo, but it's a weird part that he took, and you never get to see him play character parts, so it's just fun to just watch him prove that he can.
It's so subtle. It's such a thin line that he crosses into that point of view. It looks like Tommy, kind of sounds like him, but he's not.
He's having, as always, Tommy, he's having tons of fun. As with every role he's ever played, he has so much fun in this part. You can tell.
And also, like, he's playing a gay character, but he doesn't play it as I'm playing a gay character.
More effeminate. It's more effeminate.
It's more of a it's a very, very subdued, subtle performance. And I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite Pesci, but he's really important in the movie. I love. He has the best line in the movie, which is finally Kevin Costner goes, "Who shot Kennedy?" And he goes, "What the fuck?" He was like, "Do you not get it? This is an enigma wrapped in a riddle."
Yes.
Nobody shot Kennedy. Everybody shot Kennedy. Like, it's obviously that's not true, but it's like he has the most important, lines like that to get us into it. I'll probably go with Jack Lemmon, because he's the first one where he's like, "Man, you really don't get it, right?"
Yeah, Jack Lemmon in anything, really.
Yeah, dude. As always, solid as a rock.
Yeah.
So
fan of Jack from way back,
dude. This is a weird. I just want to wrap up by saying this is a weird movie to talk about without talking about the conspiracy.
I think we're doing a pretty good job of dodging it a little bit here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I said I smelled shit, but everybody smelled shit. Like, we didn't say it definitely is this way. We didn't actually lay out in the movie what Oliver Stone exactly what he thinks, because I think it gets pretty clear by the end. But I think it's cool, and I think everybody should give it a watch if you haven't. It's good stuff.
My last point, I just want to say this. I do think that this movie does a good job of, that was a weird period. Again, if you're also like me and you're struggling living in this time period with the divisive politics and everything, and it's scaring you. And this movie reminds us that there was a period in time in the 60s where 4 American leaders were assassinated within 8 years. 8 years.
With Secret Service and with all
2
the
brothers and 2 activists, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Like, this is insane, dude. Something was fucking happening. I don't know if Oliver Stone answered it. I don't know if we're ever going to find the answer, but it's good to remind yourself that you're supposed to do exactly what Jeff said, which I think Oliver Stone nails. You're supposed to question your government, but you're supposed to do it responsibly. And movies like this can help sometimes, whether or not you think it's propaganda. So hats off to Oliver Stone for getting it made.
Nice. All right, people. Well, we are going to take a quick break so we can refill and pee, and we are going to see you in a second with an incredibly important movie. I really hope you stick around. It's so good. Boyz in the Hood. Stick around, Phil Pets.
Back with the bottle open and everything.
Oh my gosh, so fun talking about JFK. So now it's time to move on to film number 2 here on our pod, which is Boyz in the Hood.
Yeah.
Dave and I had a little watch party with this on Twitch.
In hindsight, I don't know if this was our best first film for a Twitch watch party. It's a heavy film to watch in a watch party.
Our first comments. Somehow nobody commented for the first 30 minutes of the movie. Our first comment is the guy playing Trey a sex criminal? And we went, it's Cuba Gooding Jr. I hadn't heard of that.
No,
and then he went,
not.
I think he is. I'm going to look it up. And then we looked it up and we're like, oh no, he actually has had some allegations. And this is our first live stream of such an important movie. And here we are talking about whether or not Cuba Gooding Jr. has had some allegations. I believe the answer is yes, but we are not going to
the answer
weigh
is
in on those.
yes.
But anyway, what a way of setting up our
we
movie.
don't need to,
Okay, this is a very important, very awesome, very incredible movie. This is called Boys in the Hood. As I said before, it was directed by John Singleton, who also wrote the film. It is based on his real life. Dave and I actually were asking ourselves exactly how much of it was exactly true, but we should go ahead and go on the journey with him and assume that it's pretty close.
Well, I did some further research, and a lot of the scenarios are true. Like the cop that terrorizes him, all of that was based on actual characters he experienced.
Jesus. So the IMDb pitch is: it follows the lives of 3 young males living in the Crenshaw ghetto of Los Angeles, dissecting questions of race, relationships, violence, and future prospects. So it starts out when they're young. And by the way, Lawrence Fishburne is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s father in this movie, but also the younger child before Cuba grows up. And Lawrence Fishburne is fucking awesome in this movie. He's so great. So you see the kids when they're younger, and then a couple of the characters, Doughboy and Ricky, I think. Not Ricky. Doughboy and I forget who the other one was. Go to juvenile. They go to juvie for apparently stealing. But it comes out of nowhere. It actually has, as Dave and I were talking, a very Stand By Me feel.
Oh, yeah. The first section of this is very Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Doesn't even try to hide
eventually
it.
It just it directly references it eventually. So it has some Stand By Me elements to it. But black kids in South Central Los Angeles. Crime. In fact, yeah, we'll get into this stuff, but a kid on the way home from walking to school sees guys gambling on the street, and then they beat the absolute shit out of each other while his kid's walking home. Like stuff that most of us, certainly the 3 of us, we never had to deal with growing up. And this is a point of view of people that really exists out there that just never gets any attention. And here is John Singleton showing us this lens up close through this point of view. It's so good. Flash forward to the future. You have Cuba Gooding Jr. playing Trey, who I would say is the central character in the movie, whose father is Lawrence Fishburne. And then you have Morris Chestnut plays Ricky, who is a college football prospect. So he's in his senior year of high school. He looks like he's 27, but he is in high school still. And he is trying to get a scholarship at USC.
Hey, if 90210 can do it, they can.
But I think one thing that's really interesting that makes this film very relevant, I know I'm still in my setup. This film is nominated for Academy Awards, right? Ice Cube is one of the leads of this movie. Ice Cube, this is 1991, had just split up with NWA that had released albums and songs that include Fuck the Police and very, very obviously South Central LA driven, which is exactly what John Singleton wanted. And it was his first choice to play this role of Doughboy. But he's an angering figure to the white patriarchy of America at the time. And John Singleton puts him in this movie and still gets the accolades and the credit. So it's like, it's really bold. This movie is bold, but it's also very simple and beautiful. And so, good stuff. That's my setup. We'll take it from there.
I also wanted to point out that this movie came out, I looked this up the other night. Just let me get the date right, just because I don't want to fuck it up. So this movie came out in June, I believe, of 1991. And the Rodney King beating was on March 3rd, 1991. Yeah, I mean, we have to. We have to talk about it. Like, this was, every now and then things line up. Yeah, every now and then things line up in the zeitgeist, and you just, it needed to happen. Serendipitous, who gives a shit why, but it's important. And I think that this movie came out at a very important time. We're living in one of those moments right now. And, if our Boys in the Hood came out right now, I think people would flock to it just the way people flock to it with this one. I think it's very unique for us to be able to say, unique's probably not the right word. Spike Lee had been making a couple movies at this point, but I think it's safe to say that John Singleton was the second emerging voice from Black male filmmakers at the time. This is before Menace to Society. This is before those brothers that made so many great movies. This is
the Wayans brothers.
No. The guys who made Menace to Society, and they made a few other really great ones, Dead Presidents and stuff. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like this movie was the first time. This is fucked up, but I'm just gonna say it. Obviously, I don't feel this way. I have heard people talk about Gershwin and the Gershwin brothers before, and they say something general. The adage is Gershwin took jazz off the streets and brought it to the concert hall, and I feel like this movie was one of those moments. And I'm not going to credit him entirely because, again, Spike Lee was making movies before this. We have done Do the Right Thing on here before, right?
Sweetback. there are other. Yeah.
Way back, yeah, there were definitely things that were happening before, but this movie came out exactly when it needed to come out. And I think the reception it got was heightened because of what was happening in the world. So kind of unlike the conversation we just had about JFK and Oliver Stone, bringing back a subject that we need to not forget, John Singleton was the person that we needed with the balls at 24 years old to come out and say, this is something nobody is talking about. There is a line at the end of this movie where Ice Cube is saying he was watching the news early that morning. He says they were talking about violence around the world, and they didn't cover the hood at all. So they either don't know, they don't show, or they don't care. And that's it. That's where this whole movie can be wrapped up. It's all amazing. I recommend watching it. But when that moment lands for you, you realize, especially as a person who does not identify as a minority or a person of color, you have to give a fuck to actually find the issues that are happening around you. We shouldn't be waiting for somebody like John Singleton to make these kinds of movies. But, sometimes, unfortunately, we live in a pop culture world and we need somebody like him to come out and do it. Have you guys ever seen this movie before?
No.
I think the biggest challenge with these films is not to get these movies made, it's to get these movies seen.
Right,
which again is why that it would not have gotten without Spike. I again don't want to pool everything together because that's
actually
that's only going to circulate the problem. But
I'm not sure
this movie
how
does not get $6.5 million without Do the Right Thing being.
I'm not sure how he did it, but he apparently handed it to Amy Pascal. And she took it, but she didn't. Apparently, the story behind it is she didn't take it to the morning meeting where the other production executives would shoot it down. She had a personal meeting with her boss that afternoon because she knew she was sitting on something really good, and that was how they got it through, and it got handed over to another producer who then took it off.
He got signed from CAA right out of school, so we knew he was going to be saying something. I guarantee you, the scripts he probably came out of USC with his portfolio. They probably all dealt with.
What I want to know is how do you walk out of film school and hand your screenplay to the associate producer or vice president of production at Columbia? How do you get that contact? Is film school doing that in this country? That's awesome if it is.
He was PA. He apparently gave the script to Lawrence Fishburne in the 80s when he was doing a TV show or something, and he was a PA during his college years. So as you guys should know, when you're in that world, you try to find ways of handing scripts around.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not begrudging him at all. I'm glad that happened. I'm glad this movie got made.
Well, I just want to know
how I can do it.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I think the reason this movie got made was because of Do the Right Thing and other movies that Spike was making. I think people wanted this, and I think it was just heightened and it was affirmed by what happened with Rodney King that this was unavoidable now, as it should be, as it fucking should be. We should be making more movies. Yeah. Of course they filmed this before that happened, of course. But I feel like this issue, try to put, because you have to do some research to get yourself in the context of 80s into the 90s for Black America. This was when the crack epidemic in major cities in the United States was overwhelming all of the media, all these fucking white people that were sitting at home. I remember this. I remember as a child saying, I remember as a kid sitting there on the floor and watching the news and just seeing footage of inner cities and hearing white news reporters talking about the crack epidemic. And we weren't getting any firsthand perspective. So this movie also, whether or not how he got it to Amy Pascal, it's interesting, but I also feel like the nature of this business is a little shitty and sometimes it works out. I think she also knew that this is the time to start telling these stories. It's going to be very important. And I think it did end up paving the way for a lot of great movies that came out of the rest of this decade.
Let's talk about the movie. So obviously we're talking about hard subject matter. They shot it on location in South Central Los Angeles, right? It's in the NWA territory. There are surrogates for the gangs, but you don't really see gang culture. You see people who are involved in gang culture, but you don't really see the conflict. This is not a movie about gangs. In fact, what the movie really is about is Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character in his younger years has a conflict at school, in the school classroom with another student. A fight erupts, and so the kid gets suspended, and his mom, played by Angela Bassett, who's incredible, says their rule was if he gets in another fight, gets another suspension, he has to go live with his dad because only the dad can teach the son how to be a man. Now we can talk about family dynamics.
She had a little contract written out for him that he wrote as well. I love
well,
that.
she was also in grad school because she was trying to better her life. And so her timing wasn't as open to raising this kid. So he goes to live with Lawrence Fishburne, who is a business owner. He owns a business, and the kid's a comic book reader. So again, this is not a gang movie. This is not that kind of movie, just to make sure that we're not leading anybody astray down that path. This is just a movie about people who happen to be living in this area. That's what this movie's about. It's not about the subject matter. It's about why the subject matter exists, in spite of the fact that this is just people who want to raise their fucking kids. That's really all this movie's about.
Living in a war zone.
And it just
actually,
happens.
Jeff, you're making a good point
sounds everywhere.
I think it heightens the story. Broken record over here, but you guys know I love these when we can deal with family drama and small kitchen sink dramas and insulated stories and end up talking about other things. I think one reason why this movie was so accessible to white audiences and mainstream audiences is because it wasn't an issue-driven movie. I don't think they had to market it as this is about gang culture. This was a story that everyone could relate to. It just happened to take place in South Central LA.
I mean, that's the thing as well. Yeah. The characters are so relatable. They're just people. They have their friends. They have their group that they hang out with. They have conflict within the group. They have some good times. They have some laughs. They sit in their porch and shoot the shit. Like, they're just regular people trying to get on with their lives.
Mm-hmm. The Stand By Me thing is so good too. I mean, they find a body, and guess what? It's not a body by the railroad track. It's a guy that was probably killed in gang violence, right? It's when they go the first time. That was actually the second Stand By Me reference. The first time they go to see, and there's holes in a Bush Reagan poster. Bullet holes in a Bush Reagan poster is the first time they go kind of like on this little adventure with the three kids, just talking about life, talking about whether or not they should bring a football because if bigger kids show up, they're going to steal the football. Like it's just great. It's just really good. And it's so cool. Honestly, I know it sounds lame for me, White Jeff, to say it's cool, but it's so fucking awesome that Ice Cube is in this movie. And Ice Cube's awesome in this movie. He is not the lead. He's a supporting role. It's a tough character that doesn't make him look great. You know what I mean? Like, how many people try to chip up? You know, he was a successful hip hop artist. He left the group. He's not trying to go solo. He's just a supporting role in this movie where he's playing somebody that went to juvie and now doesn't have a job. What an interesting thing for him to do. And obviously he gets the opportunity to beat the shit out of a guy who's wearing an Eazy-E jersey. So that's like a little bit of fun for people who are curious about that kind of stuff.
Little side thing.
This is just, I don't want to keep, I want to stick to the movie because I think the movie itself is so good, even if you didn't think about all these other things. And it's not good because it has Stand By Me references, which is cementing it into film culture, into which I guess at that point is still very much white film culture. It's accessible to people who are or are not. It doesn't matter. Again, you can pick and choose how deep you want to go into this. We are obsessed with how this movie got made, how important it is, but it doesn't need to be. It can just be this sweet, beautiful story. And I think it's awesome. And it's just so great that Ice Cube is that supporting role. It's just so important and so awesome.
I think, and I know that this was, as we already said, it was based on his life. So I don't know if we should credit him for having the idea, if this actually was his life circumstance, but to heighten it in the context of this cultural reflection, I thought was powerful. The fact that Angela Bassett is his mother is the one not in the picture, and that his father is in the picture. To say and raise the middle finger to a lot of mainstream culture, which even still now, and certainly at the time, had a terrible cliche in their minds that Black men do not father their children, was I thought it was so effective. And again, I don't know, and I really don't care if that actually happened to him exactly that way. I thought it created a lot more interesting conflict with his parents that actually ended up. I thought Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, when he finally grew up, it was heightened a little bit because to subvert that cliche, Angela Bassett wasn't a waste of space. She ended up doing something really, productive with her life, and she found success, and she still was having issues connecting to him. So I thought it was really powerful. And I would love to have asked John Singleton that. Sadly, he's passed away, of course, but I would love to have asked him if that was literally what happened or if he was trying to make a statement, because I thought it did something very interesting to the story, that there were so many opportunities that he found. And I hear myself as a white person saying this. I'm not sure if the storyteller knew I got to subvert these things so that people can find the humanity in all these characters, or if that literally is just how it felt. And we are fucked up for thinking that any part of those cliches have any truth to them at all. Ice Cube, just like you said, Ice Cube being totally relatable, struggling with his stuff and taking on a character that was dirty, but clearly had heart, clearly had some kind of morals and ethics that ate him alive and eventually killed him, got him killed. Cuba Gooding Jr., who was battling with that stuff, the women and the girls that were in his life. Shout out to Regina King, who's got a really hilarious, funny part, supporting part in this. Why are you calling women bitches all the time? I don't know. I feel like this movie does a good job of finding the humanity in the hood. And I have a feeling it's not bullshit. I don't think he did it to subvert story stuff and to make it a smarter and more interesting movie.
Yeah, John gets the gush.
Never has been more deserved gush alarm.
Sure.
I'll be a part of this gush too, because I think another thing that really hit me in the heart, like really got me, is they have a friend in their group. Now, again, these are guys who don't have jobs, so they are susceptible to inclusion in gang violence and having guns and violence, etc., because of their circumstances. Let's be honest. If he just stayed in school and read comic books, he might not be in the situation. But one of their friends is in a wheelchair. That actor in real life, as Dave and I discussed in the watch party, when he was 6 years old, growing up in South Central Los Angeles, was hit with a bullet fragment from gang violence and was paralyzed from the waist down. Do they mention that in this movie? No. They just put a friend who's in a wheelchair and he's just in the crew. When they go to drive off, they put him in the car. It's not a struggle. How many movies, when they're looking for characters, include somebody that has mobility issues? Count on your hand how many movies you've seen where somebody has mobility issues, and that they don't even mention why he's in a wheelchair. And the actual reason, if you go on Wikipedia and find out, is like enough of a reason to watch this movie. They just cast this friend of theirs whose story is just as fucking important as everybody else's, and now he's in a wheelchair for life, and his life is going to be even more difficult because of that. And they don't even mention it. They just treat him like a normal person. I think it's fucking beautiful.
Mm-hmm. The guy who plays Ricky Baker, Morris Chestnut. I thought he did a wonderful job of. I'm going to credit him, and I'm going to credit John Singleton. I come from a place in the South. That's where I reign from, and there are a lot of people who still have a lot of prejudice, and like you can feel the culture is down here. I've lived in New York City for a very long time, and it's different. There is racism everywhere, but it's different. And I grew up all the time hearing very conservative white men talk about the fucking bootstraps analogy. Yeah. And I think this movie is just a perfect example. North Carolina is where I'm from. Michael Jordan. There are certain people in the Black community that have rose to enormous stardom and have infamously not given back to the communities they came from. Shout out to LeBron James, who's fucking changing that cliche every day. I think he's fucking awesome. This movie does a good job, again, through just very standard dramatic storytelling. I don't think he was trying to make a point. Ricky, the guy who plays Ricky, Morris Chestnut, Ricky's character does not succumb to the pressures of gang violence. He doesn't fail the SATs and then decide, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to enter the gangs and I'm going to start dealing crack so that I can make money with my brother, so that I can support my family. He tried up until the hood took his life from him. And of course, that is good dramaturgy. I thought that's really good for the script. I don't know if that actually happened or not. But I thought it was a really poignant moment that he avoided. It's just another example where he avoided a lot of issues to make it seem more grounded in drama and not grounded in an issue of, look how hard it is to live here. I did not feel like I was being manipulated at all when he eventually got killed. And I don't know how you guys felt about that, but I felt like it came out of something very organic, a heightened fight that was super small in a previous confrontation that turned into massive murder. Yeah. And then that echoed into other murder. It's just so petty. And
right.
in
and
between
the murder wasn't
the
celebrated.
fight,
it wasn't glorified. It was like,
right. And in between the fight, the initial fight where Ricky's character starts the confrontation, or he doesn't start it, but he gets hit by this other guy and there's a confrontation. In between the fight and his murder is this scene that is placed where Lawrence Fishburne is showing the young guys a billboard for a new loan officer, and it's talking about gentrification, which is a very big issue, and Spike Lee and John Singleton cared a great deal about it, as everybody else should. And I thought it was just so well placed that they were listening. Ricky's character and Trey were there. They wanted to hear, they wanted to understand, and they praised it. And then he got fucking killed.
Yeah,
So,
dude, when we got to that scene, I was all in by this point. And when like the car pulls up near the corner and they're standing there and they're looking at it, and in my mind I'm like, don't run.
Yeah, he said
stand
out loud, yeah.
still. Like, but yeah, as we know, they ran and it turned out like it did. But it was like I was all in by that point. I was like, no.
No.
And then
I love the education
when they picked
idea.
him up and took him home, I was like squirming in my seat, waiting for that scene because I knew it was coming and I knew it was going to be hard. And I knew it was like I said, we hosted this for a watch party. And when you have the watch party, it's like literally just our faces in the corner. And I can't imagine what the look on my face was like because that was one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen.
Filmmaking wise, I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me, and I felt this way the first time I watched this movie too. Part of me wanted them in that master shot when they get him out of the car and they take him into the house. Part of me wanted to just hear them screaming inside and not go inside. And then I had forgotten how important it is to watch his mother attack Ice Cube. This was your fault. This was your fault. Like, we needed to see that part. It wasn't just the tragedy, Ricky's dead. She thought she knew who to blame, and we all think we know who to blame. We all think it's the gangbangers' fault. It's not subjective. It's not the individual. There's a bigger picture there that no one can control in those neighborhoods.
And the
Very,
wife,
very
or not the
powerful.
wife, the girlfriend and his child. He had a child early, you know, and you know, so you could see that legacy. So that this movie's about more things. I love the speech that Lawrence Fishburne gives at the billboard that you referenced, John.
Yeah.
And he basically said, this is the first time that I had even thought about, well, not the first time for me personally, but in 1991, I'm sure when they were talking about like the crack epidemic, which you mentioned, John, and one of the best lines in the movie is Lawrence Fishburne going, so crack is a black drug, right? It's a lot of people succumb to it. Where does it come from? Does it come from America? No, it comes from South America. We fly it in through planes. How many black people have planes? This is getting floated here by white people. It's being trafficked by white people, and it ends up in black culture. Why doesn't the government stop it? Because why would they stop it? It's doing them a favor. And just that like idea, and he says it like, you know, take it or leave it for the argument, but Jesus, very, very compelling case. And he's saying it like somebody that's educating his kids. And it's fucking great. Dave, I want to ask you one question about the audio design, because God damn it, that helicopter that's circling, and you don't see that. You don't see the cop cars. Like, tell me about how that visceral experience is assisted by.
Well, also, like I had like my noise canceling headphones on, so I was getting every single piece of it. And like, there's birds in some scenes, and it's almost spatial, even though I was only listening in stereo. But one thing we did watch, we watched the 4K restoration on Amazon Prime, and it's just beautiful. Like the restoration of the film looks amazing. So it's worth, like, it's included in Prime, for you can either watch the original or the 4K restoration. Highly recommend the 4K restoration. But as far as the audio soundscape goes, it's at one point it becomes noticeable, but it becomes noticeable for the right reason, because you're like, that helicopter is just always there, except in the middle of the day. At nighttime, it's always there. In the middle of the day, you've got like the birds and the neighborhood and that sort of thing, and the occasional helicopter, but that helicopter is just always there.
And the shootings, the shootings and the ambient sound design of just screaming and shooting all the time. And again, I try to, even now, did you guys feel this way? Even now, you might think, is that a stretch? I bet it fucking wasn't. And I guarantee you, in 1991, when people were watching that in movie theaters, the only place they could watch movies back then, I bet a lot of people were like, is this fucking real?
And even
is
if it
was,
and I've
lived in LA before, it is fucking like that in parts of LA.
Even if it was a stretch, that's what it felt like to him, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it felt like to them, for sure. Such an important movie. Yeah.
I love the duck hunt gotcha, where you see the barrel of a gun.
The duck hunt gotcha is great.
You see the barrel of a gun, you're like, oh shit, and then the guy's just playing duck hunt like a normal fucking person.
Yeah.
I will say, and I'm ready for. Sorry, Dave, you want to finish that, because I'm gonna get buzzed.
No, I was gonna say they originally one note about the director, they wanted to replace him with someone more experienced.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and he actually refused and basically said, and he doesn't want someone who didn't grow up in South Central to make this film.
Yeah, they shot it on location.
Yeah.
Why would you want somebody like, get the fuck out of here?
It was a longer quote. I paraphrased, but it's a really good one. So look it up.
We got to wrap it up, but I didn't like the score. I really didn't like the score.
I was actually going to ask you guys if the score bothered you.
The score bothered me. It did. It's the synths. It's the 90s
It's
synths.
90s,
We know.
yeah. Like they're coming out.
Was it
It
literally
turned into Touched by an Angel a couple times.
Everything
was
is
it literally
everything is
the
Doogie
music?
Howser.
But was it literally the music or was it the editing? Because I thought they used it
Good
at
question.
times that I wish there was not music there. I think it would have been more real and grounded if it didn't have music behind
I
it.
think both.
And
It's
sometimes
that-
I thought it
it's
was just
that-
cheesy, kind of cheesy music.
It's that synth. The synth sits right in Jeff's annoyance zone.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, he hates that synth.
Oh yeah, I understand. We gotta get buzzed for
All right,
something. in this
all right,
movie.
all right.
It's really great otherwise. But so just know that when you go in, that there's some, whatever. Anyway,
It's also given. It's
otherwise-
his first fucking movie, so if
Well,
that's
I don't
the only
know.
mistake he made.
Well, I'm sure at the time it was perfect.
At the time,
It
it
just
wasn't
didn't
even a
work.
mistake. That was the style.
It's just 90s. You're right.
Yeah.
There's also a what if where Will Smith got the original offer for Cuba's role. And so
I mean,
I did think about that.
Fire up
Oh, wow.
your Apple Music
Wow.
and have a listen to the '90s albums. You'll hear some familiar
God.
shit.
For sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should end it there. We're gushing like crazy. We love this movie. It's on Prime. It's on Amazon Prime right now, as Dave just mentioned. Go watch it. Should we do our usual setup for what we're gonna do next week,
Sure.
but not actually spoil the fun too much?
Sure.
We can spoil it now. Or do you want to wait till the end? Or
Let's wait
No,
till
we're
the
gonna
end.
do a couple Christmas movies. We're
Yeah.
gonna do some Christmas movies.
We're
So we'll
gonna-
spoil the
next-
movies at the end.
Yeah, next week we're gonna do the Christmas movies you can watch with your family. So we got a two-part
Yes.
episode coming up. We've got next week we're doing the Christmas movies you can watch with your family, and then the week after we're doing other Christmas movies that we'll announce next week.
Yeah. All right, film fans, we're going to take another break and we will be back to decide, was it really that bad? And we are talking about Drop Dead Fred. See you soon. And we're back.
We are back.
hey,
We are now in our redemption segment. This is where, now that we're starting to get nice and saucy after an hour and a half of drinking and talking about movies.
Saucy.
Well, hopefully it's only an hour on the podcast so far, but we've been hanging out for an hour and a half here on Zoom. We are now going to try to redeem a movie. We're going to put our gimmick to the test, where we drink every time we say something negative about the film. We're going to put it to the test with Drop Dead Fred, 1991. A young woman finds her already unstable life rocked by the presence of a rambunctious imaginary friend from childhood. So just to remind you, imaginary friend. And I also will remind you, a young woman. This is a fully grown woman who is married to a much older man than her. I don't know if after seeing the movie you actually believe that they were married, but apparently according to the story, they're married. And so there's a lot of flashbacks to when they're younger and she sees the childhood imaginary friend, and then when she's older and that imaginary friend, who is played by comedian Rick Mayall. The leading lady here is Phoebe Cates. And a huge shout out to the vice president, the senator turned, I guess, second vice president on West Wing. And, come on now, Princess Leia herself, Carrie Fisher, who did not know what she signed up for. We have...
and rewrote most of her dialogue.
As
Oh my
she should
God,
have.
you guys.
All right, so let's do something about this segment. So we're a positive film criticism podcast here. That's what we are. So why don't we start positive and say, Dave, why did you recommend this movie?
I just want to say, what is this even doing in this section? Fuck you guys. Like
Get the fuck out of here.
like no, I have a soft spot for this one because I like grew up with the young ones. Yeah, it's a British comedy show. Rick Mayall was a star of it, and this was Rick Mayall's attempt to crack the American market. And so he bought the same madcat comedy that he does on the young ones and that he does in his stand-up, and he brought it across and he applied it to this character, and he came out exactly as Rick Mayall does. And the world was just not ready for it. America was not ready for it at all. They didn't get it. It was like 3 years before Jim Carrey had even done anything like this. And I feel like it was just too much. But I mean, in saying that, this movie was incredibly successful.
Was it really? Yeah. What did it earn?
So New Line intended to release the film with 150 prints and support it with a 1.5 million PR budget. which is a huge release for an indie film because this was originally produced as an indie film. They did a test release in 3 US cities, and it had such a response that they decided to release the film to over 900 prints and a 6.5 million PR budget. It sold to over 50 countries and was a #1 hit in Australia and New Zealand. So, like,
Well,
I think the only reason this movie sucked is because it was here. I think.
Interesting.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're saying the film itself doesn't suck. It only sucks because Americans suck.
No, it sucks because Americans have a different sense of humor too, and we're not ready for this to come at them.
So this film only sucks to Americans.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Like that. So yeah, that style of zany, slapstick,
ridiculous,
really
childish humor.
True. Yeah, it was really working in Australia, New Zealand, and Britain.
Yeah, I mean, in Australia and to a lesser extent New Zealand, you get a lot of British programming, and we get
Jeff, I've never been prouder to have claimed independence from from the Commonwealth of Britain than after seeing
JFK.
this movie. Holy dog shit, Dave! Oh my god, this movie is safely in my top 5 worst movies I've ever seen. No doubt about it. I don't feel bad at all for saying it. That was a very
leave that up there
till
you drink. It's staying there till you drink.
I'm going.
Now, to piggyback off what John says, I don't know if it's in my 5 worst films I've ever seen. I do know that I didn't necessarily. Dave is just chugging his beer.
I think he was frozen.
I think he was frozen, but it looked like he was like, oh, these fucking co-hosts. I tried to give a good suggestion for this gimmicky fucking show.
No, the camera didn't freeze.
There are some details in some moments that are really funny, and I think there's like a nice 3 minutes of sentimentality. When he gets hit by when Drop Dead Fred, who's an imaginary friend, gets hit by a fire truck, and all you see is the shoes stay on the ground somehow. His whole body just gets demolished, but his shoes stay on the ground in exactly the place. It's like a cartoon, and I guess that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
He literally pours a full bucket of paint on a grandma. Yellow paint poured on a grandma. Now, of course, you have to admit, over an hour of just doing boogers and stuff, like, it gets a little.
Okay,
you have to start asking yourself.
That is my one criticism. I feel like the zany
boogers?
stuff. No, just all the zany stuff. The boogers were cut out of the original release. They were put back in for the 25 year. So in the original,
that's what the film was missing.
Yeah,
that's what it was missing.
There you go. It's like Oliver Stone just worked his magic on this. But
it's basically the same movie.
Yeah, and no, but like at the beginning, you're right. The madcap stuff starts to get a touch repetitive, and you're like, okay, I'm over this now. But then he settles down and does some actual acting a little bit later.
Well, okay, let's talk about this, because there are a lot of television elements in this movie. So I'd be curious, and you would probably know better than me, Dave, what television was like abroad in the 90s. Because to me, this has cheesy elements like Seventh Heaven. It has zany elements like a Nickelodeon show, but told through adults. And Jim Carrey had even more class than this. So it's like, I can't quite. Okay, fine. But then it gets into, here's a line. I wrote down a line. I'm paraphrasing this. But just as a reminder, this girl who is married, although if you watch the movie, she's only married on a TV show. She's not married in real life, right? Like, this doesn't make, I don't know how she's married to this guy. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I'm paraphrasing. Quote, I never should have let my mother know how much she can hurt me because she'd do it all the time. End quote. And then all the stuff with the guy, this became a gaslighting movie. I'm watching The Queen's Gambit. She basically has to be on drugs because she's in an orphanage. They give the girls in the orphanage tranquilizers to sedate them, because once they realize their life is shittier than everybody else's, they act up and they go crazy. This movie, if it was a gaslighting parable, basically, of she needs this imaginary friend because if she faces her own reality, and then you can be as funny and zany and ridiculous as you want, because at the heart of it is truth. I think for the first 45 minutes there was no truth, and we were flailing a little bit. But that's just me. So I'm curious, Dave, how do you respond to that?
I feel like no, you're right. There was very little truth in the first half. Of it was all Rick's introduction to America, and it probably wasn't handled the best it could have been for an American audience, for like a British, an English, or an Australian audience, or a New Zealand audience. That was Rick Mail. Like we didn't need the introduction. Yeah. We knew what was coming the second she opened that box. Right. But yeah, it's hard because it's almost packaged like when they first made this. The company that originally funded it took one look at it and tried to sell it to another studio, mainly because they were like, "Oh, we thought we were making a kids movie." And this is not a kids movie. Like,
yeah, who is this marketed to?
Well, that's the thing. I think they intended to make a kids movie, and then they ended up having to wrap it up as a black comedy. But it's a very psychological movie. I mean, there's a couple of messages in here. It's like you have to know yourself, and to find yourself, sometimes you have to look in the dark, naughty places. Is definitely one takeaway.
I feel like there was an enormous. I'm going to be as kind as I can. I'm going to try to speak constructively about this movie. I feel like there was an enormous obstacle that was missed until halfway through when she finally went to the child psychiatrist, and got the pills. I feel like there was so much more comedy that could have erupted from her as an adult confronting her childhood best friend that they just didn't even acknowledge. Even as funny as Carrie Fisher is in some of her moments when she's just talking to her friend and acknowledging that Drop Dead Fred is here, and her friend Carrie Fisher, the friend of the lead protagonist, is trying to kind of play along with it. And she's like, "Oh God, this is terrible. You sunk my boat and stuff." I was like, where the fuck put this woman who is having a mental breakdown, the protagonist, into some kind of scenario where she's at least being considered truly crazy, and let Fred come out in terrible ways. I don't know.
I mean, they did that in the restaurant. I feel like they were
avoiding. Yeah, but I feel like they were avoiding that number one obstacle just so that Ricky Mail could do his shtick. So it was just, I don't know. I feel like I feel like from the get-go, I did not know why the fuck I was watching this movie. And then at the very end of it,
Jesus Christ. How do you not buzz that, Dave?
I'm waiting for him to finish his point.
At the very end of it, I feel like I agree with you, Jeff. The very end of it, the movie clearly did have a message, and I don't understand why they didn't try to start facilitating our journey toward that message quicker, so that by the end of this movie, when they finally go into her dream house, which was kind of cool, kind of creepy, I felt like it was forced. I felt like it was like, all right, now we're here, and they're going to make Fred for the very first time have to speak sincerely to her. And that, I felt like I was manipulated big time by that. They weren't giving me any breadcrumbs leading up to that moment. And that frustrated me. I was already not really enjoying it anyway because it's all a comedy, but just structurally, they didn't do themselves any favors. And they shoved that down my throat at the very end of it. And I felt like I was like, come on, 20 minutes, I'm supposed to digest all of it?
And I'll pace it back because again, there was some funny stuff in the comedy. Obviously, there was
sure. Carrie Fisher's funny, dude.
Going all the way back. So this movie opens with the mom reading a fairy tale to the daughter and then saying, "This is a bunch of shit." Opening credit. Okay, fine. That's not that.
Yes,
now that's
that
not
girl
new to
was
audiences.
super cute.
Yeah,
that
she
girl
was great.
Adorable.
Okay. So then the first time we see adults. Oh my God, I can't remember what her name was. What was
Phoebe
Cates' name?
Phoebe Cates.
Anyway,
From
when we
Gremlins.
see her as an adult,
Elizabeth.
When we see her as an adult, she gets, again, very sitcom-y, but also very comedy movie. She gets robbed while she's at a payphone because her husband's leaving her. And then she goes to her job, which is a court stenographer, and she gets fired. So she has a terrible day, which is not entirely her fault. And we're sympathetic to her. And so she goes nuts and she's really freaking out. She's about to have a nervous breakdown. And so she sees her friend Drop Dead Fred. And then it's all about him. It's not about her. So this movie, back to what I was saying before about confronting patriarchy and gaslighting and all the things, the male comic doesn't come in to support her. And he could still do all of his things, but I never got the sense that he was doing it for her. He was doing it for himself.
I mean,
Dave, how do you respond to that?
Well, no, there's it's a case of
I said something negative about a film that you're not buzzing, so I really appreciate how
that's fine. That wasn't
articulated my points are.
that wasn't entirely negative. And
yes,
you had You had a good reason for it. Basically, the answer is Phoebe was there to play the straight man the whole way through.
It's her story.
But that's the thing. Like when you've got a character that rambunctious, to have someone pull it back that far and literally try to play entirely realistic against this ridiculousness, that's a lot of what comedy is. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In a lot of cases in this, she gives phenomenal performances, like the restaurant one. The shopping mall scene with the violin was so fucking uncomfortable. My wife got up and left the room. It's just like, but there's like the scene in the restaurant. She's just where she's it like you can see he's manipulating her, but of course there's no one there because no one else can see him. But the look on her face, this pained look of like, I'm really trying to hold this together. Please just accept what's going on. This is not my fault. Like there's some wonderful subtle performance there from her.
Right.
There is, but I agree with Jeff that it's like this movie thought it was going to rely on the gimmick, and it didn't realize that it needed a story to actually make a movie. You made the comment
until it
about,
did, and then it was almost too late.
Until it did, it was too late. You made the comment about Jim Carrey, and I totally understand. I love Jim Carrey, but I've always understood why some people struggle with him. Like I know what you mean, but his breakout performance was Ace Ventura. So if Ace Ventura was a vehicle for him to go nuts until he made 3 other movies where he really went nuts, I think Ace Ventura succeeded because there was a mystery at the center of it.
I was more thinking around the mask.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless, there was still a story. So even though the mask is, it's fucking full of antics. But I feel like his best crazy performances, Liar Liar,
Liar Liar, grounded.
Yeah, it's good. Or when they're grounded in a story. So I felt like, I remember I just could not stop thinking when I was watching this movie, there is no way this guy went to the screening and thought, I'm going to have a career in America. After he saw it, there was no way he thought.
Yeah.
There's no way.
You know what I think the real problem is? The real problem in this movie is you have a British comic genius with an up-and-coming American actress being directed by the Dutch. There's no way this is going to work out. Get on board with your comedy, people.
Well, apparently they offered this to Robin Williams, and he turned it down.
Williams
he passed on it.
Self-respect. He did the Fisher King this
and
year.
They also
headed in the right
and they also offered they offered directing it to Tim Burton, and Tim Burton turned it down because it was too much like Beetlejuice. But if you want to go
really
down
tell from the production design of the secret creepy house at the
exactly
end.
The
well,
same.
the front of the house, did that look familiar at all? Because they shopped it to New Line, which of course is the studio that was basically saved by Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger. It looked like the house.
And Freddy was finishing up with that, and a couple of like executives at New Line were thinking, okay, we've got this other quippy supernatural character. We can possibly turn this into a franchise. And I don't know whether they bought it simply because of that and didn't know, but like, yeah, it's just I give this a lot of leeway because of what I saw Rick do beforehand and the fact that I grew up with that style of comedy from him. But this was like, I don't know, it just didn't get there in its entirety. And I feel like if he'd pulled it back at the beginning, a little less Fred at the beginning,
I think
it might have been better.
It's the point of view. I think it's the point of view. I think if it was his movie, it would be one thing. But because it was her movie, I just never bought that anything he was doing. It was all, get on board with me, woman. Or not, I don't mean to make it sound patriarchal necessarily, but like,
she was originally going to be played by a British actress.
I don't know. I'm just literally just talking about the point of view. The story is hers, and he's supposed to be there to support her. Straight man, crazy man, that kind of stuff is tangential. The point is, it's her movie, and his comedy was his own. And I never felt that connection between the two. Even there were a couple sentimental scenes we talked about.
Really? Because the movie's not called Elizabeth.
And that's
why. Then why is she the only one with the story? He doesn't. His story about whether
there's a really good conversation.
He doesn't have a story.
There's a really good conversation that accompanies this movie, which is, was he there at all, or is this whole thing her just having a psychotic break?
Of course he's not there at all, dude. Of course he's not fucking there at all. It's an imaginary friend. This is a movie about a schizophrenic.
So she just had a psychotic break. Yeah.
Yeah, which again, I keep going back to that because like I feel like there was so much more that they could have unpacked if they had not tried to think of this as a comedy vehicle for a British comedian, and they would have actually leaned into the comedy of a woman having a psychotic break after what happened in that day. She lost her job.
Because
She lost her
psychotic
marriage.
breaks are
she
fucking
lost
hilarious.
Psychotic breaks can be hilarious when you treat them correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they
What
ran
movie-
away from it at light speed.
I thought she was signing up for because
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't think it was this
I
necessarily.
don't know, dude.
but
She
I'm
made
curious.
she made When Harry Met Sally like 2 years before this. This was the lowest point in her career, right? Was this not?
This is where the wishful drinking was started. Is that what was that play called that you wrote? Wishful drinking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's- I think that's
Okay,
it,
we
yeah.
talked about this movie. Okay, so there's funny shit. Obviously, depending on your point of view, we it's great. We disagree. This movie is funny to one out of the three of us. That's pretty good.
Give
That's
me a
pretty good
one. I'm
odds.
gonna do it. We never do this, but I'm gonna pressure my co-host here to do this. Give me a 1 out of 10. What is this movie for you guys?
Oh, that's so beneath us. It's like a 4. 3, 4.
You're such a fucking liar. Yeah, you're a fucking liar.
I
It's
don't
not a
know.
four.
I'd give it
it's
a
lower
I'd give it a
than that.
5 or 6. It's not the best movie I've ever seen, but
5
I
or
enjoyed it
6.
as a kid. Yeah, and nostalgia is what
I just
gets me
want to
with
point
this
out.
one.
I want to point out the discrepancy. The IMDb rating is a 6.0, and the
Mhm.
tomato reading is 11%.
But the audience score is 77%. So what the fuck, man?
Yeah, I'll tell
They,
you.
they
Like,
had some stands.
I do have
Oh.
like my favorite joke in the entire film. I just want to get out before we wrap up is when they're on the boat and it's sinking, and he's out
Yeah.
the front and he's come up the front and she's looking. She's like, "What's that water doing there?" And he's like, "I don't know. What are your thoughts?" It's like my favorite.
That's good.
It's like
That's good.
It's like the
It's
one
like we speak
line.
the same
like the-
language.
yeah,
we
it's
speak
like
the
the-
same language, and it's lost in translation, Dave. I don't understand why that's funny, dude. I can't. I was sitting there. I was like, Dave thinks this movie is funny. I'm trying to get on board. It just. I was furious watching this. I'm sorry. Maybe
I'm gonna-
don't watch this movie. I'm sorry. Why is this on HBO Go
I'm
right now? Why did they
fighting-
make it to
It's
this?
cheap. It was cheap. That's why it's cheap. I'm gonna fight for my movies
Jeff
from now on.
calls it
Okay,
too.
so next week, Dave, introduce what we're doing next week, and then let's go to sleep. What do you say? Let's do it. What do we do next week?
Next week. Yeah, bye bye, drop
Ah.
dead, Fred. I'll take that back to Australia with me. We're doing our little Christmas lead up to the Christmas season.
Tis the season.
So we're doing the holiday movies you can watch with your family, questionably. So we're gonna do Home Alone,
yeah.
Classic.
and we're gonna do even bigger classic, Miracle on 34th Street, the original.
The original.
Yes. And then we're going to do National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
God, it's gonna be funny. We should say that for the last when we're drunk. It's so good.
Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah,
going
that'll be
last.
fun.
Yeah.
All right, we'll have
That's
some
good on
fun
me.
with Christmas. All right, film fans, thanks for joining us for another episode. Let us see you next week. Till then.
Peace.